For a long time, people have been asking for a WrestleMania outside of the States. And believe it or not, we did get it at WrestleMania 6, the very first show to not take place in the United States of America. It took place in Canada, in the Sky Dome, and a phenomenal crowd. Too bad that the show sucked. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of the WrestleMania review series. We're at WrestleMania 6, the Ultimate Challenge, and this show was awful. I can't believe I sat through this entire show. I was ready to call it quits. This show was just really hard to watch, and as good as the Warrior Hogan match is, it's kind of a disappointment because in order to get a match that great, you would have had to build these guys up to be the two top baby faces of the company. You literally have Hulk Hogan, the top world champion, and then you have Ultimate Warrior, the top mid card champion. And in order to get to that, they had to have beaten everybody on the roster. So really, everybody on the roster was irrelevant to, if I'm being quite honest. If anything, they should have just had like maybe 8 matches on the card, and that's the problem. These shows had 14 matches, and the good news is that Peacock blurred out one of them, so I only got to watch 13 of these matches. So kudos for that. The big high point of this show is that it was the first ever WrestleMania outside of the States. It took place in Toronto, Canada, the Sky Dome, one of the biggest arenas ever. So that was really cool. They didn't do America the Beautiful this time around. They did the Canadian national anthem. Really appreciated the extra little touches. The crowd definitely sold this. Fun fact: Edge, Adam Copeland or Cope, was actually on the crowd, so it's a very infamous moment if you remember that. We kick off the show with Rick Martel beating Coco Beware via submission. This basically was their way of building Rick Martel. If you remember the previous year, he screwed over Tito Santana because he wanted to go on a singles run. Um, Rick Martel, unfortunately, what happened. But he was a solid mid carder, and Coco Beware was a solid jobber, so I couldn't really fault this. The Colossal Connection versus Demolition. Not the greatest match in the world, but a good moment for sure. They gave the belts back to Demolition, who, um, I'm being honest, Demolition I've enjoyed more than the Legion of Doom. Maybe that's just me. Their matches with the Heart Foundation impressed me more. Maybe I got to see the LOD at a very low point of their career. Maybe that's why I'm not as high as them. But I am a massive Demolition fan. And this match with Haku and Andre the Giant, it wasn't more about the wrestling necessarily. It was more about the moment. And the moment was that after the Colossal Connection lose, um, Andre the Giant turns on Haku and Bobby the Brain Heenan, officially goes babyface and walks onto the crowd, or AKA walks out the sunset. Very infamous moment, a very different type of retirement. No retirement has ever been like this before in a while. Nowadays you get like a farewell match, you get like people putting their careers on the line. This was just a very simple, it didn't have to be grand. Like Andre didn't need to be the main event. It was just simple. And sometimes a simple retirement helps, if you know what I'm saying. Earthquake defeated Hercules. At this point, they were trying to build up Earthquake. At this point, I'm sick of watching a Hercules match. Please be the last one. This guy's not a good wrestler. And Earthquake is not a good wrestler either, but they were trying something with him. Brutus the Barber Beefcake versus Mr. Perfect. This was the first solid match of the show, but nothing to run home about. I would have liked it if this was like a hair versus hair match. I think at this point, Brutus the Barber Beefcake could have really gone bald, and then maybe made Mr. Perfect more the impactful. And hell, if it was a hair versus hair, I'm pretty sure Brutus would have lost. But man, Mr. Perfect needed this victory. I think making him this unstoppable, perfect wrestler, it could have kept going. If I'm being quite honest. But anyways, solid match, but again, nothing to run home about. Half of these matches are like less than 10 minutes. Then we get to the match that I did not watch because it was cut off from Peacock. Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown. For those of you who do not know, this is the match where Roddy Piper painted half of his body black, and it got very controversial. Like I said, I didn't watch this. All I know is that it ended in a double countout, and moving on. On to the biggest disappointment of the night, the Hart Foundation defeating the Volkovich. You would think that the Hart Foundation would get one of the standout matches of the entire card, given that they're Canadian wrestlers. Nope. Guess what happens to these guys? Um, the Bolsheviks, one of them is turned around, not paying attention to what's going on, and then they give a heart attack to one of the guys. Bret Hart and Neidhart get the victory, and the rest is history. Very disappointing, given the first WrestleMania to take place in Canada. You have hometown wrestlers only get 19 seconds. Shame. Just pure shame. Then we get the Barbarian versus Tito Santana, and at this point, they were just trying to build up new guys. They were breaking up tag teams to try to get more out of them, and the Barbarian, he was okay. Tito Santana, who I'm a big fan of, um, yeah, this was just what it was. On to yet another disappointment on the show. Macho Man or Macho King Randy Savage and Queen Sherry versus Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. And it's very sad. The guy who main evented back to back WrestleManias last year is now in a mixed tag team match. A disappointing mixed tag team match. Why didn't they just do Savage and Dusty? And if they wanted Sapphire and Sherry to brawl, they could have brawled. But this should have really been the main focus, would have been these two. I know Miss Elizabeth was in the corner of Dusty, but it's just sad. Two iconic legends uh, coming up to this point, and Dusty Rhodes was just a goof in WWF. He was a legend in WCW, and Randy Savage deserved way much better. A guy who, up to this point, hasn't even left the company. Um, it really disappointed me. Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire get the victory, and the only thing that saved it was the commentary mocking Sapphire. Orient Express defeated the Rockers by countout. Again, with these stupid countout victories, I just am sick of them. And the fact that the Rockers are the ones that are getting screwed over. The Orient Express, who could fight, they could wrestle. They just didn't see the potential in them. If they didn't want them to get a clean victory, why don't just have the Rockers win? Eventually, one of them becomes the showstopper. Jim Duggan defeated Dino Bravo. At this point, I was ready to turn it off. The damage has already been done by Jim Duggan. He was just a comedic character. Dino Bravo, who a couple WrestleManias ago, they were trying so hard to build him up to be this top tier talent, and now look at where he's at, losing to Jim Duggan, another joke character. Ted DiBiase versus Jake Roberts. Now this I was excited for. It's the two names that I recognize, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And it's for the $1 million championship. Oh, I'm sold. It ends by countout. These stupid DQ countout victories, they gotta die. They gotta go. I'm just sick of them. Because this was an actual good match, and then all I could take away from it is this stupid countout victory. Ted DiBiase, the $1 million man, wins. Obviously, he cheated to win, which was kind of like the whole purpose of his character. I would have just preferred if maybe if you don't want to make Jake lose or tap out, he could have just like passed out on Ted DiBiase's submission hold. That would have been nice, something different. But uh, what can you do? Big Boss Man defeated Akeem. I guess the tag team broke up and they went their separate ways. And yeah, this was terrible. Both men are not good wrestlers. I know, you're not supposed to talk. Big Boss Man defeated Akeem. They needed new talent. They broke the team up, so then they have him fight here. Terrible match. 2 minutes. Who cares? Rick Rude defeated Jimmy Snuka. I believe this is the first Jimmy Snuka match that I ever talk about up to this point, which is kind of crazy to believe. But it looked like Rick Rude was someone that they were trying to push, and then Jimmy Snuka is one of the more infamous wrestlers of the 80s. Too bad his reputation now is ruined because of his fault. I'll just leave it at that. But I do think that this was good, solid for what it was, and definitely a great way to ease up the crowd for what's to come. And what is to come is the Ultimate Challenge, the WWF Champion Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, the Intercontinental Champion. Both belts on the line, winner take all. Who is it going to be? And this could have gone one of two ways. Either Hulk Hogan is big ego, holds all the belts. Eventually, he'll win the tag team belts, and then he'll basically win the $1 million championship, get all the belts in the entire world. He goes to WCW, take all those belts, whatever. But no, they actually pull the trigger and give the Ultimate Warrior his win. And because of it, this is one of my favorite main events in the history of WrestleMania. The crowd sold it, the wrestler sold it. It wasn't necessarily about big moves, cool stuff. This was about just them selling their moves well. They kick out of each other's moves. A lot of people have compared this match to like ballet because it was just a lot of uh, grapples and swinging people around. But you could say that about any match. I really enjoyed this, and my favorite part of it was the finale. It's like Hogan goes for the leg drop, misses. Warrior misses the his body slam or his slam, the one where he jumps on the when the wrestler's on the floor. They reverse each other's finishers, and eventually Warrior hits his. 1, 2, 3. Warrior holds both belts. A moment that has been repeated countless times, but never the same as when the Warrior did it because he had fireworks. The only thing that I hated about this was Hogan going up there and try to steal the spotlight from Warrior. I'm like, no, you sit down. Um, it's too bad that in WCW they have a rematch just because Hogan wanted to get his victory and it became one of the worst matches in the history of professional wrestling. But this one was an iconic. We erased the WCW one. This is the one that people will remember for years to come, and it is one of my favorite main events. Definitely my favorite main event up to this point. So kudos for that. But man, this show was bad. The crowd saved it. Warrior Hogan saved it because if it wasn't for those two things, this show would have been an F. Also, the commentary was good. You can never go wrong with Jesse and Gorilla. So there was that. I am gonna have to give this show a D. A lot of it is saved from the main event. I don't want to give it the same grade as WrestleMania 2, so I'll just say D plus. It wasn't god awful. It definitely had a lot of dumb stuff and a lot of disappointments. So D plus because I really, really enjoy that main event. Um, so I'll just leave it at that. Go watch Warrior Hogan. Don't ever watch this show. Um, Anyways, that'll be it. We're gonna move on to WrestleMania 7. I've heard good things about that show. Hopefully, those aren't lies. I can't wait for that one. Anyways, take care, everybody.